You don't know if last month's projects made money. Not really. You know what the spreadsheet says, but deep down, you know that's not reliable. Your software costs almost nothing. Excel, Google Sheets, maybe 5 or 10 bucks a month. So why does it feel like your business is running on duct tape? Well, it's because the real cost was never the license. I'm Mike Hiley, and I've spent almost 30 years in professional services, 14 of them at WPP, implementing ERP and PSA systems for firms across multiple countries. I've watched this same story play out dozens of times. Spreadsheets got you this far because they're cheap and flexible. Anyone on your team can open one and solve a problem today. But that's exactly why they spread, and forgive the joke. One tab for resource planning, one for project budgets, one for time and expenses, one for forecasting, one for work in progress, and so on and so on. I've seen spreadsheets with more than 30 sheets in some businesses, and I'm not exaggerating. Nobody sat down and decided to run the business this way. It just accumulated, tab by tab, until your spreadsheets become your operating system. And that's where the trouble starts. There are 7 costs hiding inside your spreadsheets right now. You're paying all of them without realizing it. The first one is unbilled time and slow invoicing. Timesheets will come in late. Approvals happen over email. You log time in one system, but then you bill from another. And then unbilled work sits there invisible until somebody finally goes looking for it. Or worse, it just sits there forever. Every week that invoice waits, you're financing your client's business with your own cash. And if you never bill it, your team did the work for free. The second one is profitability you find out when it's too late. Your data lives in 5 disconnected files. You can't see the actual labor costs or budget versus the actual while the project is running. You find out the project lost money after it's finished, and in some cases at the end of the year. And by then it's way too late to do anything about it. The third one is resource planning that's already raw. Different people have different versions of a plan. Availability data goes stale the moment somebody saves it. People get double booked. Others sit underused because you don't have a clear view of capacity. And I know this from personal experience. I used to work with a firm where we had a lady that managed a spreadsheet on a daily basis, and everyone was constantly querying it. The fourth is forecasts you can't trust. Your forecast runs on manual updates, gut feel, and completion estimates. Pipeline data that lives somewhere else entirely. You hire staff projects, and manage cash off unreliable numbers. The fifth one is what we call the reconciliation tax. Invoice moves between your CRM, your project system, time tracking, expenses, accounting, and all your spreadsheets. Over and over and over, you're paying people to keep the numbers in agreement across tools that were never built to talk to each other. And that cost obviously never shows up in your P&L, but it's still real money. The sixth one is data errors. And this one isn't a hunch. A peer-reviewed Dartmouth College study had audited 50 operational spreadsheets, including several from consulting firms. The researchers found wrong result errors in 86% of them. Across more than 270,000 formulas, about 0.87 produced incorrect results. I mean, 0.87 sounds really small until you remember that your model has thousands of formulas, and most of those errors weren't typos. Reference and logic errors accounted for about 80% of the wrong results. The scale of this isn't theoretical. In an SEC enforcement action, Hertz was found to have a spreadsheet error that failed to reserve for receivables over a year old. Correcting it would have increased expenses by about $7 million. Nobody at Hertz set out to lose that money. It was just a spreadsheet error. Seventh, and I see this in almost every single business, is that one person holds the whole thing together. Somewhere in your firm, there's a spreadsheet that only one person understands. Nobody documented the logic, of course nobody does. And if that person was sick, the process stops. And if they leave, the knowledge just leaves with them. That's not a productivity problem, that's a control risk. Look, if you want to estimate your business's spreadsheet tax, use these 4 categories. Number 1, direct labor cost. Try and add up the hours your team spends entering, transferring, checking, reconciling, and correcting data. Multiply that by the time it costs each one of those people. The second one is revenue leakage. Unrecorded time, unbilled expenses, missed billing milestones, and all the write-offs I was talking to you about earlier. The third is the cost of delayed decisions. I appreciate this is a bit harder to estimate, but try and estimate what it costs you to hire late, staff the wrong project, price a deal off bad numbers, or miss the moment to step in before a project goes sideways. Then the fourth and final is the rework cost. This is the time spent on chasing discrepancies, fixing invoices, rebuilding reports, and redoing analysis that should have been right in the first place. Estimate and add those four numbers together, and that's your spreadsheet tax. Run through the list below that I'm about to give you, and if three or more of these sound familiar, you've definitely outgrown the tool you're relying on. Your management reports take hours or days to put together. The same numbers live in multiple files or they don't match. One person is the only one who understands the critical spreadsheet. You don't know if a project made money until it's over or at the end of the year. Your resource plan is out of date almost as soon as you save it. Your team argues about which numbers are correct. And growth means hiring more admin staff and not building better processes. Look, I'm not telling you to delete Excel. In fact, I use it all the time myself because it's still one of the best tools available for modeling, analysis, and quick prototyping. But use it just for that. The problem starts when you start using a spreadsheet as your system of record, tracking approvals, holding the only copy of your project data, and acting as a shared database that three departments depend upon. That's just not what it was built for, and eventually it will let you down. So the goal isn't zero spreadsheets. The goal is to stop depending on one to run your business. You might rightly be asking, what should I replace spreadsheets with? And the answer isn't 10 disconnected apps instead of 10 disconnected tabs. You need one system that connects your CRM, your projects, your budgets, your resource planning, time and expenses, billing, revenue forecasting, project profitability, and financial reporting. Those systems do exist. That could be an integrated ERP or a professional services automation platform, or a smaller set of specialist tools that are built to actually talk to each other. What matters is the connection, not necessarily the label on the box. The 2025 consultancy bench press study looked at 299 independent consulting firms with a revenue of up to £50 million, which is about 60 million bucks. Firms relying largely on spreadsheets reported an average gross margin of 40%. Not bad. But firms using PSA software reported 46% gross margin, and non-partner utilization was 66 versus 70%. It's difficult to conclusively say that these improvements are directly related to moving away from spreadsheets, but that's still a meaningful gap, and it lines up with what I've seen across firms, especially the ones I work with directly. So closing that gap takes more than new software. It takes a plan. Start with the business problem, and I know I say this all the time. Find where the spreadsheet's dependence is costing you the most, either in cash, time, or risk, or even a combination of the both. Map the current processes. Document who owns each step, what gets approved, and where the exceptions live. Decide who owns the data. Every type of information needs one system of record, and not three. Prioritize revenue and cash first. Time capture, billing, resource planning, forecasting, because they're the ones that matter the most. So obviously start there. Choose technology based on your requirements. Don't let a slick demo define what you actually need. And roll it out in phases. Replace your highest cost spreadsheet process first. Manage integration, training, and adoption delivery instead of all of it at once. Your spreadsheet costs are already there. They're just spread across salaries, delays, write-offs, decisions made on bad information. Because none of it shows up one line in your income statement, it's easy to underestimate. Most firms compare the visible cost of new software against the assumed cost of zero for staying put. And that's obviously the wrong comparison. The right one is to compare the implementation cost against the full ongoing cost of staying on spreadsheets. If your spreadsheet disappeared tomorrow, which parts of your business would stop working? At Highly Solutions, we help firms find where manual processes are quietly costing them money, to find what they actually need, and implement the systems to replace the spreadsheets holding them back. Visit us at highlysolutions.com to find out more about what we do, and please do subscribe to this video.